I am so very excited because for the first time ever, we have access to the Raycast tool. Look at this thing. It's incredible. It's a arrow. It's a cube. It's kind of like a trigger, and it's got this line shooting out of it, and you can see it kind of like detects what's near it. And so here now it's firing and hitting my hand, and so you can see, boop, it kind of is like very, very cool, isn't it? After a little bit of playing around, I've created this arrow which represents the direction in which the Raycast is firing. It's all grouped together and it's running this Raycast test script. And in here you can see that I've tagged in the Raycast Gizmo object so that we can reference it in the script. And here you can also see that the Raycast is roughly 10 meters long. I currently have it set up so if we zoom into the grouping and then we open up the Raycast and then zoom out, we can see that on the Raycast we're currently working on objects tagged tree with a distance of 10. And so because of this, when we move this tree object into the way, you'll see that it collides. Like if we put it down here, of course it's going to hit, but over here we have a little bit of spacing, which is very interesting to see how that's going to end up working out when we put this into practice. It's found under your Actions tab at the very bottom. We have Raycast and Raycast with overrides. And so far we're going to talk about Raycast. Now to use Raycast, you're going to need to go to Variables, create a new object variable, and we called this one RC to represent Raycast. And then under our Operators tab, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, we have Raycast now below Lists. And this allows us to get Raycast data. Now that's really important because Raycast as an action is going to fire off the Raycast, and then it's going to hold on to the information it received from that firing. So we can debug print a did it hit, and so did hit by itself just checks if it's an object or a player, and then we have a true or false statement gets returned. We can do that for objects only or players only. We can also get the object specifically that was hit. We can get the player specifically that was hit, so it's going to return an object ID or a player ID. Then we have hit distance, which returns a number value representing how far it was that it got hit. We have hit point, which is the point at which it was hit, so that's a vector value, x, y, z. And then we have the hit normal. And what a hit normal is on your object, each surface is a normal. So this is one normal, this is another normal, so there's 6 of them. So you have your up, your down, your left, your right, your forward, and back. And so basically by getting the normal, you can know which side of the object was hit. Now, did hit static, I haven't quite figured out yet, so I'll let you know as soon as I figure that one out. If you know, please be sure to leave it in the comments. But now what's most important to note here is say you have a gun firing, and every time you pull the trigger finger, it fires the gun. So you shoot the Raycast off, and immediately after shooting the Raycast off, you're going to want to grab this information like, did it hit an object? If that's true, what do you do if it's true? So you could say, if did hit object, you could run an if statement, literally just bring this did hit object in, and then if it's true, it'll do everything in that if statement. You might have seen our video recently. It's our haptics feedback gun, which is with local scripting, and local scripting is super important for using Raycast because it's going to give you very responsive rates. And so if you haven't seen that video, there's a link here. It'll also be in the description, and we're going to augment our script from before. As a quick recap from our last gun video, if you hit the gear icon, you can see that we made this a local script. And making something a local script basically just makes it more responsive because it's running on the user's headset, so we don't have to get information from the server. So here at the beginning of the world, we're adding 4 bullets to our list. Then we transfer ownership of the bullets, the visual effects, the sound effects, everything that's going to be interacted with. We have to transfer ownership of that to the player so that it's running on the player's headset. That's how local scripting works. Now, similarly, we're going to need to do that with our Raycast Gizmo. So we're going to create a new object variable, and this is going to be called our Raycast. Now that we have our Raycast variable, we're going to go down here to do transfer of ownership, duplicate that, and we're going to transfer ownership of the Raycast to the player. After that, you'll remember that we calculated the distance between the left hand and the right hand, so that way we could make it left-handed or right-handed. And then when the player pressed the index trigger to fire the gun, we cycled through the bullet list, and we launched that current bullet at a fire speed. Now this is all really awesome, but the question you have to ask is, okay, now we've launched that bullet and it's going to go off and fire, but where is it going to hit? Now if we know our bullets don't have gravity and it's just going to fire in a straight line like a laser, then we can use a Raycast to figure out where does the bullet hit. And by knowing where the bullet hits, we can leave a little like circle, or we could put a visual effects to be like a hit effects when some like a player or an object gets hit. And this is all extremely powerful. And so to quickly show you how that would work, if we go to our Actions tab, scroll to the bottom, we're going to click Raycast. So right after we launch, we're going to do a Raycast out of our Raycast Gizmo. So we'll grab that Raycast object variable, put it in here. Now we've fired a Raycast, which we'll go and group into our gun in just a moment. And so now we need to get the information. But the information we need has a purpose. And so, for instance, the first thing we're talking about was using a visual effects on the player that gets hit. And so what we're going to do is go to our events tab, use an if statement, because remember, we can check to see if a hit occurred. And then at the bottom of our operators tab, where it says get Raycast data, we'll drag that into the if condition. And so we'll say if get did hit from the Raycast Gizmo. And so we'll just grab our object variable and drop it in there. Now, if that comes back true, this if statement will run. And what do we want to do if it was hit? Well, what we want to do is move to, so we're going to grab the move to under instant motion, and we're going to move a visual effects. So let's go grab a new object variable, and this will be called hit FX. Now, hit effects is what's going to happen where the Raycast hits. So if we grab our hit effects, we're going to move it to the position. And now if we get the get from Raycast, we can either get that from our operators tab at the bottom, or we can just joystick to the right to duplicate it from the previous one. And what are we getting? Well, we're getting the position. And so at the bottom, it says hit point. So that's our position. And we'll grab the Raycast. And then, as I said before, joystick to the right to duplicate it into there. So we move the hit effects into position. And then what we want to do is go back to our actions tab, scroll up a little bit to grab play visual effects. We're then going to play hit effects. Okay, so we've moved visual effects into position. We've played it. You're already using Raycast. This is awesome, but there's so much more you can do with this. For instance, if we hit a player, we can then do so much more. So let's say instead of getting just did hit, we say we get did hit player. Now, did hit player is also going to return a true or false value. And so if we do hit a player with our gun, so we're going to say this comes back true. Not only do we move the hit effects into position and play it, we're also going to teleport the player back to the spawn point. So this is going to be a one-hit respawn. And so if we go to our actions tab, our motion tab, and then scroll down to respawn player, we'll drag that in here. And which player are we respawning? Well, if we grab this get hit, joystick to the right over the player section, we are going to get the player that was hit. So this gives us the player value that was hit from the Raycast Gizmo. And we're not responding it to self. So again, we're going to need to go to our variables tab, create a new object variable. And this object variable is the respawn point. And so we'll respawn player to the respawn point. So imagine the player gets hit, poof of smoke, they get respawned, game over for them. Absolutely awesome. Now this is just scratching the surface of what we can do with this. Remember, under this drop down, we've got distance values. We can figure out how far it was. We can figure out where it was and so much more. So definitely play around with this. It's going to be extremely powerful. But before you leave, let's go ahead and plug it into our gun and try it out. Properties panel here, and you're going to see that we have some new objects to connect in. So our respawn point is super easy as it's already right here. Grab the reference pill from spawn point, drag that into the top. Now we're going to need the hit FX, and so I'm going to go grab a new gizmo, particle effects, and I like the poof of smoke as this is, so it's perfect. We're not going to play it on start. We're going to make sure it's not looping, and we're just going to drag that into position. There we go, hit FX. Now, because I want to make sure this is the right size, we have our spawn gizmo, which is about the same size as a player. So if we drag this over here, and I want it to be about the size of a player when it goes off. So now what I'm going to do is then go ahead and hit looping on just to see how big it is. And now that's a little too big, so we'll shrink it down. And that is perfect. We're going to turn looping off. We can close out of this. And it doesn't matter where you put this visual effects. In fact, all of your guns can use this same visual effects as long as you reference it in, because every time it gets moved, it's moving into the position of the player. So you only need one visual effects element, which is awesome. Now the Raycast is the hard part here. So we're going to go ahead and pull out a Raycast Gizmo. There we go. And we're going to then open it up, grab that, and connect it in here. And the reason this is hard is because we have to bring it into the grouping, which isn't honestly that difficult. Now this Raycast is set to 2000. It is totally okay to leave it at 2000. You could go lower if you don't really want your guns to be able to fire more than a certain distance, but we're going to leave ours at 2000. We're also leaving it on collisions with players, so this will only work on players, not objects. And now that we have that, we need to bring this object into our gun. So you can see I have clicked on it one time to select the object. We're then going to zoom into the grouping by pressing that arrow there. And now that I've brought it in, we're going to turn snapping on, grabbed from this snap point here, and put that on the front of the gun. Now, if we're in close quarters with a player, we can't have this all the way in the front of the gun. So we're going to actually move this in and slide it right to about here, right in front of the tip of the gun. So now that our Raycast is in position, you can see it's firing out. And as I mentioned before, when you have it on collision with players, you can see it's actually colliding with my avatar in build mode, which is really strange. So you can see it's not very accurate, but it is colliding with me. Okay, and then we'll double click on the top button to zoom out of the grouping. You can also press the button from your properties panel here. But now everything is connected in, so we can close out of this. And we have a volunteer, David. You want to come in here with me? We're going to try this gun out. Okay, so it's firing. And, oh, look at that, Whoa. It works. It teleports, boom. Woo-hoo. The visual effects going off. He's getting teleported. And you probably should add a cooldown to this because that could be really mean to people. I'm the player getting shot at. No! Ah! And I'm gone.
There you go.
Yep. So that was pretty cool. And so I'm going to see if I can't dodge you. Let's see. What is it like to dodge? Ooh, ooh. And so one mistake I did make is you'll remember with our original gun, we had set it up so that our bullets had some gravity. But because this fires in a straight line, we need to make sure our bullets fire straight so that the collision is more accurate. So if we go into our bullets here, we're just going to open these up. And then under physics, we're going to turn gravity off. Super simple. That's all we needed to do. That looks really cool. Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool. And bye, David. No, I'm going to get you. I got you. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Check out the Raycast Gizmo for yourself in Horizon. Make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.